Hi guys, thanks for tuning into my third book video. I really love doing these, so I'm really happy when people watch them, so thank you. So I'm going to start off like I usually do by going through my currently reading. So I'm on the third of the Regeneration trilogy now, on the last book, The Ghost Road by Pat Barker. I'm just over halfway through and I got that out from the library, so at the same time as it I got a book of World War poetry. So it covers World War One, the in-between years, and World War Two. So every couple of chapters I read in The Ghost Road, I'll stop and then I'll read a couple poems, and it goes really nicely together. I also got on a Kindle, which isn't mine, it's my boyfriend's Kindle. I looked through my wish list and found all books that were going for £1, and one of them was The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, or Gibran, I'm not sure how you say that. But I found it and it said it was going to be £1 and it was actually free, so I got that. I think it's one long poem, really lovely, so I'm about 9% through that according to Goodreads. And then I'm also still on Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which Goodreads tells me I'm halfway through, but I know a big chunk of the book is footnotes, so actually I'm probably more than halfway through and still just plodding along with that one. So don't worry, I'll let you know when I finish. So that's everything I'm reading at the minute, and I'm just going to go straight into May, June haul and wrap up. So I bought a haul at the beginning of May and I read them all plus a couple of extras through May and June. First book I'm going to start with is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I gave this 4 stars. So I obviously read this because I was dying to get it done in time before the series started on Channel 4. And unfortunately I got it read in time, but then I watched the first episode and I wasn't really impressed. I think the problem was that it was contrasting too much with what the images I had in my head from reading the book, and I didn't like that. Like, I preferred the way I'd imagined it from reading the book, and I didn't want it to sort of overtake, so I just stopped watching. I think probably when it's all been aired and when maybe I forgot a bit about reading it, I'll probably go and watch it all, because it wasn't terrible. I know it wasn't terrible, and I know people are loving it, so I will eventually watch it. But anyway, the book, I'm obviously not saying anything new because like everyone's read this book, it's a classic. But Margaret Atwood is such a fantastic writer. Like, up until this point I've only read her poetry, which is amazing, so obviously her like novels were going to be amazing, but the atmosphere in her world building is so good. Like, everything the writer in this like explained and experienced, like I was feeling it at the same time. It was so good. So basically, very good book. I'm obviously recommending it. And if you haven't read Margaret Atwood yet, which I mean I thought everyone had, I'm telling you now, go and read some Margaret Atwood. Just gonna adjust again. Okay, so the next book was not part of my little Amazon haul that I do. This one I actually bought at the book signing I went to with my friend, which was to meet Patrick Ness. So everyone knows A Monster Calls because they made a film of it last year. Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. So I read that one, and I own that one actually, but not here, it's at the other house. And I read The Rest of Us Just Live Here, which is a really good book. I think I gave that 4 stars. Very, very good. So this one, I got to the signing actually, and I didn't have a book to be signed, so I had to consult my friend who is a very big Patrick Ness fan, and she said to start with this. So I got The Knife of Never Letting Go, which is the first in the Chaos Walking trilogy. It's a young adult novel about this kid called Todd who lives in this isolated town in a sort of dystopian futuristic place where it's normal that everyone can hear each other's thoughts out loud constantly. So it's called Noise, like capital N, Noise. And it's really claustrophobic and sort of really gets at you. He's about to turn 12, I think, when you become a man in this town. And his whole life changes when he comes across silence this one day. And that's all I can really say without giving away the entire plot and the way it all goes. So this was a really easy read. It had a really good pace. It's 500 odd pages, but it plodded along really, really well. And the characters were really nice. So Todd's got a dog called Manchi. Let me just check that. Yeah, Manchi, who is my favourite. He's so cute. So I gave it 4 stars because I just felt like something was missing to stop me from giving it 5. And this isn't a complaint or an insult at all, but I feel like I could not continue the series and I would have felt like I'd happily read a fantastic story that ended there. And that's saying that even though it ends on a cliffhanger. There are some really sad moments in this. One in particular, I had to physically put the book down and I cried. So just be warned, be prepared. So the third book is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. I gave this 4 stars on Goodreads, but personally I think it should be a 4.5. And I'll tell you why it was short of 5 stars in a minute. So I obviously bought this in the same way that I bought The Handmaid's Tale. I wanted to read this before I went and watched the Park Chan-wook film, The Handmaiden, which was made based on this. The difference is that this is Victorian era London and the Park Chan-wook film is Japanese ruled Korea, and I think it's set in like the 1910s, 1920s maybe, early 1900s anyway. And I really enjoyed that. It was good. It was different though, so So the plot is from the point of view of a character called Sue, who is raised by thieves in London, and they have a thief friend who is a gentleman, and he comes this one day and proposes to Sue to help him dupe this lady into taking her money. So he needs Sue to be her maid and convince her to fall in love with him, and then they are going to throw her in a lunatic asylum and split the money between them. So Sue agrees to be a lady's maid, but then she falls in love with her herself, basically. And from there, a lot of shit goes down. It is so good, though. So that's the plot that I was running off, and I thought it sounded amazing anyway, but actually that part of the plot only takes up about that much of the book, I'd say. So I got to here and it had happened already, and I was like, well, what's the rest of the book about? But let me tell you, it just got better. It was so good. And the writing of it, so I started this book, I read probably the first 10 lines and I was hooked. I knew that I was definitely going to read more Sarah Waters after this. She is a very good writer. The only reason I didn't give it 5, okay, was because there was a section about this far in, so kind of near the end, when the pace just really slowed down, and it was for like a plot reason, because in the plot it slows down and it becomes like this stagnant thing, but because the rest of it was just so I just sped through this because I was hooked and like running with it, that when it slowed down at that point I was like, okay. So yeah, I really loved the plot, but also for me it was predictable. I still enjoyed it being predictable, but in case you're not a fan of that or you're really good at solving things, you can see where it's going to go, I thought anyway. But I still loved it. So recommend this, and just recommend Sarah Waters as a writer, because I actually don't know where I'm going next, what one I'm going to read next, but oh yeah. Okay, and so the fourth book is Florence and Giles by John Harding. I gave this 4 stars as well. It was good in a different way. And actually, I gave this 4 stars, but this is where the 5-star rating system really gets to me, because it's 4 stars in a different way to the way The Handmaid's Tale was 4 stars. So I feel like I need more stars, really. I need to be doing 10-star ratings, because they're just so drastically different books. So this is described as if Edgar Allan Poe wrote The Turn of the Screw, which had that description alone had me hooked. So in case you didn't know already, I love creepy things. Like, one of my favourite books ever is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I adore Shirley Jackson. So, like, creepy things, I just love it. This was weird. It wasn't as creepy as I wanted it to be, but it was still good, and it still had that sort of like undercurrent that ran through it. There is one particular bit in the book where I was like, oh, but it was quite early on, and it didn't get any creepier than that, I think. So if you go in for creepy, this is just like, eh. So first off, I didn't know it was going to be first person narrated, so it's from the point of view of Florence, who is about 12, I think, and she's the main character, and she's got her little brother who's about 8-ish, called Giles. And I was worried because it was being told by her that it was going to have sort of, you know, a juvenile edge to it all the way through. But actually, she's a pretty good character. She's a pretty good narrator. The bit that a lot of people struggle with in this book is that because she's telling the story, she makes up words, and she does it all the way through the book. And a lot of people get really, really annoyed and just can't carry on. I personally thought that you get used to it after a while. Like, every now and then you're like, oh, there's another one, but it doesn't affect the story once you start getting used to it. And so yeah, I did enjoy it. It's about 260 odd pages, but it felt like a short novel. Like the Regeneration series, they're all about 200 and something pages each, but they all feel quite substantial, whereas this just felt like almost a shortish story. The end, I think what didn't help was that the end was quite abrupt, which I do guess is kind of the point. If you knew the plot, part of it is that's the point of it. But then also there's a sequel, so it's called The Girl Who Couldn't Read, and I probably will go on to read that because this was good enough. I gave it 4 stars. It doesn't sound like I gave it 4 stars from that description. It sounds like I gave it 3 stars, but I think I said it in one of my other videos. I'm trying not to go back and edit myself after the fact. At the time, I gave it 4 stars, so I'm going to leave it like that. So that's all of them. Thanks again for watching, and I'm going to show you the pile just as a little finisher. Oh, wrong side.